Thank you.
You think I'm short? Is your name? I'm short. I think I'm short. Oh,
I'm very short.
You may have to tell some of them move over a little bit.
Yeah, like stand in the windows. Great. Some of y'all that are hidden, do you mind if you look over? Sorry.
Okay, we're short. Move to the front.
6:15 on the dot.
Let's see. Make sure everybody look at me. Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to do my best. See, if anyone's trying to hide, I can see it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to always recognize individuals, organizations who in our city have made tremendous contribution. Tonight we have a special gathering of people who are public works officials, and I want to tell you something. Trying to get all of our good guys here organized, the bosses, this last time you'll see them is well organized. Well, they're all staying at attention for change. Thank you guys for all being here. It's a great pleasure that I will present a proclamation for the National Public Works Week, which I think is very important because without them, we wouldn't get those double parked trucks out from in front of City Hall here later on. But proclamation, Office of the Mayor, City of Pearland, whereas the nation's public works departments provide essential community services for infrastructure and municipal services that the needs that are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lifestyle. And whereas the support of our Public Works Department is vital to our public works systems that include water, wastewater, facilities, streets, sidewalks, drainage systems, and maintenance of our public buildings and facilities. And whereas the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens and our communities depend greatly on the quality and efficiency of the public works facilities, as well as their planning, design, construction by our public works officials and our workers. And whereas the men and women of our Public Works Department in Pearland are to be commended for providing essential, outstanding service 24/7 to the citizens of Pearland with 124 public work team members operating within the 16 city division cost centers. And I think that's fabulous. Now therefore I time read by the power vested in me as the mayor of this fine city of Pearland, Texas, do hereby proclaim the week of May 20th through 26th, 2018 as National Public Week's work in Pearland. And I ask citizens and community organizations to join with me in recognizing the power of public works and the outstanding service provided by our Pearland and National Public Works departments and the vital service that they perform for our communities and for our cities. Given under my hand and seal of office this 21st day of May 2018, and I have signed this as Tom Reed, the mayor, but it is also supported by our city council members, our city staff, and our citizens in our community. And this is your day, guys. I appreciate what you have done. It's fabulous. And does the sign, why don't we work that sign up a little higher, and I'll get out of the way here in a few minutes. Who is here to receive this? All right. Why don't we step over in the middle and you'll take it and do this. Okay? Ready for photo.
Okay, Kim hold it. There we go. There we go.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah, how about that?
One more time with Public Works instead of cheese.
All right, Public Works on three. 1, 2, 3.
Public Works.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank all of you guys. You're fabulous. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you for stepping in.
Not a problem.
For some monkey wrenches and stuff, screwdrivers left over. Don't worry about it. That's what we're doing. Which one? Well, I was at the, the first church.
You see Brother Hornet?
Yep, I sat next to it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a Planning and Zoning City Council member joint public hearing tonight at Monday, May the 21st, year 2018, it being at least 6:30, which is our start time. In calling to order, the council is here in its entirety with bright and shiny faces. As the Planning Commission Chairman.
Likewise, the Planning and Zoning Commission are all present.
Okay. Since we have three formal special meetings, I will open each one of them with a gavel and close each with a gavel. And let me formally open at 6:30 a conditional use permit application for CUP, and ask the chairman of the Planning Commission to read into the record the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. Conditional use permit application number CUP 18-00010. This is a request of Edwin Sanchez, applicant on behalf of Virgil F. Block, owner, for approval of conditional use permit CUP to allow for an auto glass repair tinting located in the general commercial GC zoning district on approximately 1 acre of land. The general location is 6905 Broadway Street.
Okay, the acoustics in here are pretty bad, but microphones are working pretty well. If you put them on green for open and lean a little closer, your voice will carry a lot better. Moving to item A, which is application information case summary, staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council member. The first CUP is a request for an auto glass repair tinting
And
shop.
if you'd lean a little closer to the mic, I think we could all hear better.
Sure. Located at 6905 Broadway with general commercial zoning and business commercial future land use. Staff have received 2 notices in favor of the proposed use. So the proposed CUP meets all the criteria of conformance table other than a thoroughfare plan, as Broadway Street is planned to be widened. And as per the criteria for CUP, this proposed use is generally in compliance. So as you see, this is the map for future use plan. And this one is a zoning and aerial map of the location. And that finishes our report. Thank you.
Completes the report. Moving to item number 2 under A is applicant presentation. Is the applicant here today? Applicant, please, you have the benefit of the podium to make a presentation if you'd like. Yes. You ready? Good. Thank you. When you get there, give us your name and address and then proceed with your presentation. And thank you for being here tonight. And you might be able to pull that mic where it's more convenient to you.
Hi, good evening. I don't actually have a presentation, but it's a place that we are renting out, leasing out. It's garage / office space that we're wanting to use for window tint, mainly, nothing else, just window tint for the, I guess, for our business. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
So,
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. On item number 3, let me hand this off to our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any persons in the audience that are wishing to speak for or against this CUP? I'll repeat again, are there any persons in the audience that are wishing to speak for or against this CUP? Well, thank you. I'll go ahead and hand it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, moving in our agenda to item B, which is Planning Commission staff, council, and staff discussion. Number 1 is Planning Commission. Mr. Chairman.
We'll start with Daryl. Laney?
Being that it's an existing automotive development right there, I don't have any issues with this.
Troy?
I don't have any comments. It's basically an existing business trying to expand, which is good for the community.
Thank you, Mayor. No further comments.
That completes your vote. Okay, moving to item number 2 is city councils, starting with Councilmember Carbone. Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Reed.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Ardno.
No comment.
Councilmember Little.
Good luck with your new business.
Councilmember Perez.
No comment, Mayor.
And Councilmember Owens.
No comment.
Okay. With that information in the record, we do move to item number 3, which was staff wrap-up on this item.
No additional comment.
No comments from staff at this point? Okay, then let's move to item C, which is council new business. Councilmember Little, would you please present CUP 18-00010 for our consideration?
Thank you, Mayor. Conditional use permit application number CUP 18-00006. So moved.
Second.
And
Read it. It was
Read
10,
again.
yeah.
Read again.
oh, 00010.
Good.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in the discussion by council at this item. Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, we do have motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Little? Aye. Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens? Aye. Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ordno?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay. And I will adjourn this particular standalone hearing at 6:37. And we'll also at this point open a conditional use permit meeting for CUP 2008 for CUP 18-00006, and ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Tamika McLeod, applicant on behalf of Pearland Town Center Limited Partnership, represented by Tierra Allender, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit CUP to allow for a studio, tattoo or body piercing microblading located in planned development, Pearland Town Center PD zoning district on approximately 45.6 acres of land. General location is within the Salons by JC, Pearland Town Center, 11,200 Broadway Street, number 1410.
Okay, with that information in the record, staff report.
The next CUP is for a studio for tattoo or body piercing and microblading within an existing beauty salon in Pearland City Center. The location, future land use is 288 Gateway. So far, we have received only one notice in opposition of the proposed use. The proposed CUP meets all the criteria for conformance table. And per the criteria for CUP, this use is in compliance. And that finishes my report. Thank you.
Okay, with that information in the record, let's move to item number 2, which is applicant presentation. Is the applicant here? And thank you for being here. Please give us your name and address when you get up here, and adjust the microphone to your particular needs.
Hi, my name is Tamika McLeod. With my husband, Quentin McLeod, we own the Salons by JC in Pearland Town Center. Within Pearland, there are actually 2 Salons by JC. There's one in Pearland Town Center, and there's one in Pearland Parkway. So it actually is a high-end salon franchise. Within Pearland Town Center, we have a salon that's about 7,200 square feet, and it has 38 individual suites. And so we've got different business owners who actually lease that space from us. And so what we would like to do is basically have this permit for microblading so that we can have some tenants who would like to do microblading. Now, microblading, it's a form of tattooing, but it's actually, once again, kind of a higher end way to fix women's eyebrows, essentially. So they basically take this really fine pen and just draw into your eyebrows, and it makes it look really natural. It's a pretty high-end service, costs anywhere from $500 to $700. You get it one time, it lasts about 3 years. So it's really going to be done in a kind of a private suite. If you've ever seen our salon, it's a really nice salon. So wouldn't be detracting anything to the area, and would be a good way for different business owners to bring in revenue.
Okay. I appreciate those comments, and thank you so much. Moving to item 3, Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, are there any persons that are wishing to speak for or against this agenda item? Any persons wishing to speak for or against this agenda item? Okay, thank you. I'll hand it back off to you, Mayor.
Okay. Let's move then to item B on our agenda, which is Planning Commission Council Staff Discussion. Planning Commission, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Mary?
Since it goes into an existing business, I don't have any objection.
Don't have any objection.
No objections.
Go ahead.
I have no objections.
The only thing I would add is I would recommend limiting the CUP to microblading only. No further comments, Mayor.
That completes the Planning Commission's report. Okay, moving to item number 2, this is which provides for City Council. Councilmember Owens.
The only concern I have, I mean, if it's just going to be for eyebrows and stuff like that, so okay, I guess. But I don't really care for the other tattooing part of it, if that's going to be. Is that all you're looking for? Is that you're not? And that's it?
If you could go to the podium so it's broadcast.
And just real quick, Councilmember Owens, I think the way that our ordinance reads, and plus the way that the state licensing reads, it includes tattooing, and so that's why it's written like that. That's why it's written as tattooing and microblading.
Okay, so it doesn't eliminate it, though. I mean, once it's like that, they can do, their name on the arm or American flag or whatever you want to do.
Unless we limit it in the conditional use.
Yeah, so we've actually had discussions with the Department of Health and Human Services as well. And so microblading is regulated by them. And from what I've been told, it is for eyebrows. And so we can't even tattooing is not something that would be done at our salon. It's not done at any Salons by JC franchise, and it's not acceptable either. So.
Okay, that was my only concern. I didn't want to turn into a regular
No, that's not,
see down in
not
Houston
at all.
somewhere or whatever, but,
Yeah, no.
okay. I just don't like them.
Does that complete your report?
It's not,
Comments?
it's not a report.
Councilmember Perez?
Okay, you got it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for the city attorney, if he's here, or someone. There he is. How much freedom would we have to put in language that limits the tattoo operations as a condition for the approval of the CUP?
As it's a CUP, you can attach whatever conditions you think are relevant to how you're going to pass it. And in this case, because microblading fits in the broader category of tattooing, you can limit it to just microblading, as that is defined by the Texas Department of Health and Human Services, where they get their license.
Okay. I presume from what the applicant's saying that put in such a limitation on the CUP where it would just only be microblading and it couldn't expand to body tattooing or traditional tattooing, that I presume that would be okay with y'all. So we could suggest an amendment to the CUP that adds that limitation, if there's a second.
That completes your report.
I believe you're still in the council discussion on the area, so when it gets presented for a motion,
yes,
it's hard to see. That would be the time to do that.
I got you. Yeah, I'm aware of that.
No comment.
Councilmember Little?
No comment.
Or no? Councilmember Reed?
No comment.
Councilmember Moore?
No comment, Mayor.
And Councilmember Carbone? Okay. Moving to item 3, staff wrap-up comments.
No additional comments.
No comments?
No, sir.
Okay. That information in the record. Let's move to item C on our agenda, which is council new business. Councilmember Perez, would you present this for our consideration?
06, right? Consideration of possible action resolution number R 2018-00006. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. We're in discussion. Council, have any question or comments?
So if I'd like to present an amendment to the motion to limit the tattooing operations to microblading only.
We have a motion and second. Was that seconded? Yes. Okay. We have a motion second. Okay. The limit. Okay. Councilman?
Well, I did want to ask the applicant real quick. Did you all want to include piercing? No?
No, the only thing we're asking for is microblading, just strictly microblading. That's it.
You might stand there until, just in case some more. Any other comment from council at this point?
You'd be comfortable that if you want to expand to another health and beauty operation that would be outside of the microblading or what's traditionally, you just have to come back and amend the CUP and we could discuss it.
Yes.
What I'm trying to avoid is just a broad allowance that may not necessarily be what you're looking for or what the people would around you would want. And
No,
it
yeah,
seems like
we
you're
agree with that.
Okay.
This is a motion to amend, right? Okay. We have. Does that complete your comments on that? We have a motion second to amend the motion. Is there any further discussion on that? Hearing none, those in favor of that motion, indicate. Mr. Secretary?
Councilmember Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Ordino,
No.
Councilmember Little.
Aye.
Motion passed 6-1.
That's the
Amendment.
amendment.
Okay. We now have on the table amended motion. Any further comment or question on this item? We have amended motion on the table, Mr. Secretary.
Councilmember Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Ordino,
Aye.
Councilmember Little.
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay. With the completion of that vote count, we have reached the end of this particular agenda, and I will adjourn this particular number 2 meeting at 6:48. And in a like motion, I will open the joint meeting number 3 for CUP 18-000-8 and ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of this hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Sillenbaum Houston, represented by Lavanya. I'm just going to say R. Applicant on behalf of Dancescape by Joyce, represented by Joyce Beck, owner for a studio of learning center for fine and performing arts located in the Neighborhood Service Zoning District, NS, on approximately 0.2582 acres.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the general location is 2016 Broadway Street. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. That information in the record. Let's then move to item A, which is application information case summary, staff report.
Yes, sir. So this is for a dance studio. The location is 2016 Broadway Street. The zoning of the property is neighborhood services, which requires a conditional use permit for that sort of operation to move into. The future land use plan for this area calls for retail, offices, and services. We've had 3 return notices in favor, and there were 2 phone calls generally looking for more information about what's going on. This is the code conformance table. Everything is generally positive except for except for the Unified Development Code. They would need to if council approves the use tonight, then their next step would be to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustments for variances of setback, open space, refuse screening, and corridor overlay district landscaping. Again, tonight is just for the use. It's not for approval of the site plan. Staff recommends approval of the requested CP for the dance studio. This shows the criteria for approval. And again, the only negative criteria on that is conformance with the zoning district. This is the site plan that they provided. As you can see, it shows the reduced setbacks that they will eventually be requesting for. It generally matches with the rest of the development that's in that strip there on Shady Crest. And you can see from the aerial, those buildings are rather tight together, and the lots are considerably smaller than the typical lot size that the Unified Development Code would produce today. This is the future land plan map, and then this is the zoning map for that area. And this completes staff's report.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move to item 2, which is the applicant presentation. Is the applicant here? Please come down and podium. Give us your name and address and then proceed with your comments.
Hello,
thank you for being here tonight.
Prabhu Ramachandran. I'm here representing Lavanya Rajgopalan, who was not here today. She had to attend her son's. I'm representing Lavanya Rajgopalan. And this is actually like a dance school. It's similar to ballet. It's an Indian classical dance school where children are going to learn fine arts. That is the background of that school. And currently they are learning at Joyce Dancescape, which is existing. And we're trying to expand this so we can accommodate more children for the dance performing arts. That's the background of that.
I appreciate those comments. Let me suggest that you should probably sit there because there may be some questions. You won't have to keep running back and forth. Moving in our agenda to item number 3, Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any persons here wishing to speak for or against the CUP? Again, are there any persons in the audience that wishing to speak for or against this conditional use permit? Thank you. Pass it back to you, Mayor.
Okay. Moving to item 3, which is planning, zoning, and council staff discussion. Item 1 is planning commission. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Darrell?
I'm glad Joyce is expanding.
No problem with it.
I have no problem with it at all.
Totally support this one. That concludes our comments, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Moving to number 2 is city council, starting with Councilmember Carbone. Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Ardno.
No comment.
Councilmember Little.
No comment.
Councilmember Perez.
No comment.
And Councilmember Owens.
No comment.
Okay. Moving to item number 3 on our agenda, which would provide for a staff wrap-up comments if needed at this point.
No additional comments.
None at all, okay. Then at this point, we will move to item C, which is council new business. Councilmember Owens, would you present this for our consideration?
Second.
Okay, we have a moving in our agenda to, we do have a motion second on the floor. Councilmember Owens, do you have any further comment at this point with motion? Okay, Councilmember Perez?
No comment.
Councilmember Little, any further comment with approval? No, Your Honor. Councilmember Ordino?
No comment.
Councilmember Reed? No comment. Okay, and Councilmember Moore?
No comment, Mayor.
Carbone. Mr. Secretary, we do have a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Councilmember Ordino,
Aye.
Councilmember Little, Councilmember Perez.
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay, moving to item 5 on our agenda. Time to adjourn. It's 6:55. I will adjourn this particular standalone public hearing, and this will complete all of our joint public hearings at this point. We will move to the council agenda. You taking off for today? Council meeting will start at 7 o'clock. Okay. Set. Yo. Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a regular meeting, City Council, City of Pearland, for Monday, May the 21st, 2018, at 7 p.m. You'll please rise. We'll have an invocation tonight by Councilmember Carbone, and Trent Epperson will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. If y'all would bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all of our blessings. Thank you for everything we take for granted each and every day. Be with all those that were affected on Friday down in Santa Fe, the families. Be with all the first responders, even our local guys that are going to be affected for the rest of their life. Please help everybody during this time. Help us all as a community pull together and help make the right decisions that are honoring and pleasing to you. Be with all of us as we go home tonight and keep us safe. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We want to express our appreciation for you being here tonight. Looks like a little cloudy out there, but not raining on our city hall, though. Maybe on parts of Pearland, since it's a pretty good-sized city. Moving in our agenda to item number 3, which is roll call. All of our council members are here in place tonight. And moving to item number 4, I'll call on Councilmember Reed if he will address the citizen comments.
Thank you, Mayor. We only have one person requesting to speak today. Was there any other person that wanted to turn in a form but didn't get a chance to? All right. Mr. John Despain. Thank you for being here, Mr. Despain. If you could, please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please state your name and address before you start.
John Despain, Pearland Police Officers Association, 2555 Cullen, Pearland 77581. I am just here speaking on behalf, and it's not on the agenda yet, but the new business number 3, which is the retiree health plan. I'm here to say thank you. Thank you to Michelle. It's about time. We've been waiting for this for years. Please discuss it. Please pass something. Our employees are waiting for it. Also, it was brought to me that a certain city council member did not know about our fundraiser this Friday, but the Pearland Police Officers Association has a fundraiser at Billy's Hall to build our police memorial. The Spasmatics will be there, and apparently he's a fan of it, and he didn't know that they were going to be there.
I have extra tickets.
$25 a piece. PearlandPOA.com/concert. Concert starts at 8 p.m. and 100% of the proceeds go to building the police memorial. This should be our last fundraiser before we have all the money that we need to build it. So the public is invited. Everyone is invited.
Thank you, Officer Despain.
One thing I want to ask him. How much do you lack on getting enough money for that?
The original estimates were between $110,000 and $120,000. Right now, we have $57,000 raised, and as you know, this little thing called Hurricane Harvey messed us up as far as our fundraising. Right now, I am on pace to raise about $25,000 from this concert, which would put us a little over $80,000. But we've had about $30,000 of construction services donated. So probably about June, I will get with a designer, and we will look at the funds we have, compare it to the construction services that we have donated to see if it's a go. And I think we're going to be there.
Thank you for those comments. I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, good. That sounds like a wonderful opportunity to participate in something very special, and thank you for being there. Moving our agenda to item number 5, which is public hearings. There are none tonight. Item 6 is a consent agenda process, and I'll ask Councilmember Carbone if he would mind presenting the consent agenda for our consideration. It will be items A through E.
Mayor, can we pull item Echo, please?
Which one?
E.
E is in easy? Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to pull item D.
D as in dog?
Yes, sir.
D and E, okay.
Consideration and possible action, approval of consent agenda items A through C. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Councilmember Carbone?
The Secretary?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ordino?
Aye.
Councilmember Little? Aye. Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Moving to item number D. Councilmember Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, Resolution R 2018-80. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Staff report?
Thanks, sir. We are well underway at the Reflection Bay wastewater plant for that new facility expansion of that. Shared many updates on that. This particular item is for a change that we believe is warranted, and taking advantage of not having to remobilize and do this over again at a later date. So recommending your consideration of this change order.
Okay, Council, any question or comment on that item?
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Carbone?
Yes, sir. I guess when I'm reading through this, it sounds like this work's already been performed back in January.
Yes, sir. This was part of the work of the scope of the contract, and however, the amount of grit and materials in the wet well was far beyond what was estimated in the original contract, so we overran those quantities. Basically, they were on site. That work was necessary to continue the work within the plant site itself, and to have stopped it at that point, we would have had to demobilize, pay for demobilization, remobilization, and basically put the whole project at a standstill. So we chose to continue to overrun those quantities based on the cost we already had for doing that work. We think that possibly we wound up with additional material in the wet well at the lift station at the wastewater plant after Hurricane Harvey. Probably provided a lot of flushing of the existing system, exacerbating what we expected to find in the wet well.
Okay, good. And that's what I was going to hit on. So we had just essentially cleaned this out in July, and then we go back in January and get 9 times as much as the previous time.
That's correct, Councilman Carbone.
Back when we did it in July, I'm sure we have some sort of inspection. I mean, are we sure it was done then?
Yes, sir, that is correct. Each of our times that we cleaned it out full depth bottom. It's part of our maintenance routine to take care of that. And, with Hurricane Harvey coming through, we exasperated a lot of grit, but then also flushed in that fats, oils, and grease, which is in the system. And that's another discussion topic we can have about promoting the aspect of taking the fats, oils, and grease in your residence and not flushing it down the drain, because it does clog the systems and shows up later. And that's part of also our pretreatment process, as well as we expand that service to commercially as well.
Okay. And since this was tied back to the hurricane, is there any recovery that we can do via insurance or federal funds? I know we're paying a consultant in that quite hefty, so I don't know if there's anything that can be done on that side.
I think we can ask that question. I believe what we'll run up against there is that was in the system. It just was all flushed out of the system at one time, and so had to be cleaned. So I think they would look at that as part of our normal ongoing maintenance, but some of it accelerated by the amount of water that moved through the system during the hurricane.
Okay, so we shouldn't have to go through and clean the system out. And Hurricane Harvey did that for us. I mean, that's
I think, if that's the bulk of what caused the amount that we found in the wet well with this cleaning, then we would see less of that coming into the wet well moving forward. We're also looking at an influent or lift station influent bar screen as a component of this project to add on to try to keep a lot of the floatables and a lot of the solids that end up in the wet well that we have to vacuum out removed before they actually end up at that point. Another piece of this project we haven't moved forward with and haven't brought forward to you at this point, but is under consideration at this point.
all right. Thank you.
Does that complete your comments? Any further comment or question from council at this point? Hearing none, we do have a motion second on the floor, Mr. Secretary.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ordino?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Moving in our agenda, item number E, Councilmember Carbone.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, Resolution R 2018-73. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any council have any question or comment on this item?
Fair enough.
Video, are you searching or did?
Woody's searching, but I think I can express some of the same comments that he had. So just for clarification, we've got several of these signals that we're looking to partner with Brazoria County, where existing partnerships may not exist for some of these signals, and a different partnerships exist for some of the signals that we're already maintaining. We're just trying to group everything together into one agreement. But we do have several of these that are in Manville's ETJ, but along roads that we're benefiting from. I presume that we're getting no contribution from Manville for any of these maintenance on any of these signals.
Councilman Perez, at this time, the answer is no. This is agreement between the city and the county. The county is also in pursuit to discuss the same situation with Manville and hopefully bring them into the agreement as well.
So if the county is successful, then we would replace this agreement with a three-way agreement for the signals that are in the ETJ of Manville?
It would be amended.
Okay.
And then they would be a co-participant as well.
What's the existing agreement for the signals that are along Magnolia, particularly the ones that are in Manville's ETJ and not in ours? The ones that we're already maintaining or partially maintaining.
That agreement has us responsible for 100% of those costs.
Okay. And what is the amended agreement? The amended agreement's going to have a split 50-50?
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
Councilman Perez, the amended agreement changes those percentages anywhere from 56% down to 13%.
But the ones on Magnolia?
The ones on Magnolia?
Those particular ones, the one at County Road 90 becomes 100% county. The one at 94 becomes 81% county. And the one at, I don't see the other one.
It's number 3.
87%.
Okay. And then on Bailey, we're taking over some percentage there at 89. We're going to take over 29%, 6%. But that's again still in Manville's ETJ.
Which one is that one?
The ones on Bailey.
Those border both the one at Bailey and Cullen borders Manville ETJ and our city limits. So there's a split on that one. And then the one at, I believe it's County Road 90 and Bailey, we have one quadrant of that that's in our ETJ. So that one we have only 6% of, and the other one we have 25% of.
The only reason I'm asking, I'm hoping that we can tie this into some better cooperation with the county as far as with respect to the speed limits on there. If we're going to jump in and help them with their maintenance costs, can we get some? I think the bird's flown from the coop with respect to Magnolia, but as they expand Bailey, if we again get locked into a speed limit that is not justified through the speed study, and we end up with a road that we paid a lot of money to expand and didn't get any benefit from. Now we're going to jump in and pay for signals that are partially or completely out of our ETJ. My question is this: was any of that brought into discussions as far as them requesting us to help maintain the signals? Was it brought into discussion about us having some control over the speed limits, at least for the extension of Bailey when they get that done?
I don't know that it would definitely be, that they would say we have the control over that, but I do think that they would look at that more in a normal sense with a speed study. They don't have the same obstacles to them, I believe, in the Bailey corridor that they've had in the Magnolia corridor as far as setting speed limits. We meet with them on a monthly basis to discuss all items, transportation and others between us and the county. And so we have that meeting this Thursday, and we can bring that in front of them.
Hey, would it require postponement of this item before y'all can come back and get an idea of whether or not we can tie our participation into our ability to have some control over the speed limit on Bailey as it extends over to 288?
I believe, that's the council's, decision to make. I would recommend that we move forward with this. This does provide us control over the signals. It removes some of the operation and maintenance cost that we currently bear all of to the county and hopefully eventually to Manville. And then it also, we get reimbursed from the county for the cost of materials on any repairs or any maintenance that we do on the signals that is their cost to bear.
My concern is that I don't want to hold it up just because if I'm the only one that has a concern, but I feel like us jumping in, particularly for Magnolia, we've been paying for it. If we've been paying for it this whole time, we can't get the benefit of the road that we mostly paid for. And then if we end up in the same situation with Bailey, the road doesn't do what we intended to do, which is to get traffic from the east side of town all the way over to 288 expeditiously. And I'd hate for us to continue to pour money and give money to the county, soften their burden, but we don't get control over that roadway so that our citizens can use it as they need to. At least unless there's somebody else that shares the concern, I'll just move past this, but I'd sure like to get an update of where we are into some discussions about us having some control or at least some say-so on the speed limit on Bailey when they extend their portion.
I believe one other factor in the Bailey project, at least the portion of it that will be constructed in the next year or so, is that has federal and state funding involved, and basically TxDOT typically requires a speed study to be done at the end of that to establish the speed limit.
Yeah, but they can come back later and change it.
True.
That complete your comments?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Any other comment from council or any questions?
I'm not saying I wouldn't love to have a seat at the table for those speeds, but I think we need to move forward with this and get those costs reduced from us, and maybe that will help happen in the future. But I really, from my comments and discussions with several county commissioners, I know they're not willing to move on current roads. So yeah, I have a feeling they're going to have the same philosophy on new ones.
Well, we have no leverage with Magnolia. We're paying for 100%. They're coming in. We can't. So, but Magnolia's done. But if we can do something with Bailey.
Yeah, that's good. Super. Staff have any wrap-up comments on this as well?
I've got a question on there.
Okay, Councilman.
I think Councilmember Perez was correct on that, talking to the county about that. That's one of the biggest complaints I hear, people not wanting to use Magnolia is the variation in speed as you're going down it. That's a big concern for
Would
them.
you use your microphone so I can hear you?
Yeah. That's the biggest concern I hear out of people is going down Magnolia because the variation speed, go from 35 to 40 and back down and what have you on there. And that's a big concern, why people aren't using it. The other thing too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read this, we don't get any reimbursement from the county till the end of the year for the work that we provide and materials and stuff we buy. We don't get any reimbursement off of that till later on in the year, though, is it?
Councilman Owen, that's correct. We do a true up at the end of each year, but then, excuse me, at periods of time when things are over certain amounts, if I recall correctly, we would have those discussions about authorization to move forward. But there is set forth a true up each year at the end of the fiscal year is what we agreed to.
Did we have anything in the budget to take care of that?
We would handle it through our operations and maintenance, and then that would be reimbursed back.
And materials also?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. We have a lot of these materials in inventory and in stock as well, and then we'd look to be replacing those as an if and when they are used.
Okay, so we anticipated that before we approved the budget.
We have several that we plan for, and we would just include that in our list is what we've done.
Okay, so it's not anything that would get in any of our money back from the county until we true up at the end of the year then?
That's correct. That is the plan.
And we don't have any kind of estimate what we're going to spend as of now, do we?
I don't have an answer. At this time, I can look into what we anticipate, but some of these signals are brand new, so they're still under warranty with the contractor. Some of them are older, and as Mr. Epperson has stated, is that we've already been maintaining them.
I've noticed on Magnolia on, I forget what street it is, come across there, that we didn't use the strand type signals there. It's really decorative signals, signal head and poles. Is that something that would continue using that, or is it just at that location?
Our intent for all of our signals that are located in our ETJ and that are built would be built to our standards, and so they would be decorative.
Yeah, so those are on that one location. I noticed are black decorative type poles there for the signals. But we don't have any of those any other place in the city of Pearland. Yeah.
We have them along Bailey as well. That was during the Magnolia project. There was some, I can't remember if it was I believe it was the MUDs in that area that paid for the upgrades within the MUDs. And then we paid for the upgrade with the associated adjacent signals. And then prior to moving forward with the Bailey project, with the construction there, we moved to the decorative signal as our standard. And so moving forward, that is what is in all the ongoing road projects at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. I mean, they look really nice, and it was the only one I've ever seen inside, in Pearland. So I just want to know if that's going to be something we will continue to do or not.
That completes your comments. Any other comment from council? Secretary, I believe we've got a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Carbone?
No.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ordno?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-1.
That tucked away neatly. Let's move to item 7 on our agenda, which is matters removed from the consent agenda, and we just finished one. Item 8 is new business. Councilmember Moore, would you present new business item number 1?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, second and final reading of ordinance number 2000M-171. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion from council at this point? Other than that, move to staff report.
This is a PD on the Rice Dryer Road that's going to provide some opportunities for an industrial uses. And we've seen this a couple times. This is the second and final reading.
Council, have any question or comment? We discussed this at the last meeting and the workshop, so I think it's a good idea. Any other comment from council? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, we have a motion second on the floor.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ordno?
Abstain.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-0 with one abstention.
Moving in our agenda to item number 2, Councilmember Reed, would you present this?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2018-89. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's something that we're pleased to present. It's something that's been talked about many times over the years, most recently at our early budget input session, and that is to provide an additional transportation mobility option for residents. City had Going back as far as 4 years ago, had been working with Metro on a park and ride. Metro went so far as to buy some property. They made some changes in their procedures, and so that fell away. Since then, we've been exploring and looking at different options, and pleased that we've found a private party, Kerrville Bus, that is willing to start a park and ride service. This will be done at no cost to the city directly in terms of finances. They'd be operating out of our Shadow Creek Park on Shadow Creek Parkway. And I think it's important to remember this is a public-private venture. This business is going to go where the people are, and they see a market there, and they're going to design it so that they can get the most opportunity for usage. And it would be a pay service that they would offer up. And so this is designed as a pilot for an extended time, just to test the market. We would work with them on security. We would also talk to them, we'll use our contacts at Metro to help facilitate the park and ride service. John Branson's been working on this from the staff side, and ask him to add and amplify anything on top of that.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. This program, I think, is a perfect opportunity for us to move forward with little and or no financial liability here. As Mr. Pearson clearly stated, this is a program that we've been working on for many years. As a matter of fact, when I came to the city over 12 years ago, this item was being discussed. In 2003, there was a commute solutions study that was performed by HGAC that stated that there needed to be a park and ride somewhere south of Belfort along 288. And at that point, dating back to 2003, we immediately said, well, we'd be interested, this was with Metro, we'd be interested in partnering with you to move forward with the program. In 2007, I believe it was, Metro came to the city after a lot of discussions to discuss the construction of a park and ride facility, a garage, a private-public partnership. But the maintenance cost for the city, or the city's operational cost, was going to be, over $1 million a year. In 2010, we did a transit feasibility study, and in that transit feasibility study, the citizens that came to those meetings said that they would like to see a park and ride service to and from Houston, or from Pearland to Houston and the medical center. As Mr. Pearson just mentioned, we've worked with Metro and for off and on since dating back to 2003. They purchased land here in the area, and the one thing that I think council was concerned about at that time was the cost to the city of Pearland. Well, we've got an option here right now that is not going to cost us anything, at least during this pilot program. So I'm pleased to be able to make a recommendation to move forward with entering into an agreement with Kerrville Bus Company for the initiation of a pilot park and ride program. This particular program would be a service from Pearland at the Shadow Creek Ranch Sportsplex. The service would occur Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, excluding holidays. The first planned bus would begin at approximately 5:45 a.m. They would have what are called 15-minute headways, meaning that buses would leave every 15 minutes from the site. They would travel to the Texas Medical Center and areas in and around the medical center, and then travel on down into downtown Houston. The program, again, and I need to say this again, is something that initially for this 3-year time period would not cost the city anything. When we're looking at these programs before, I mentioned the $1 million plus program that we talked about in 2007. When we brought the most recent proposal to you using another third-party vendor, we stated at that time that it was going to cost us about $300,000 a year. Again, this program is a pilot program for the initial 3-year time period. The sole burden and responsibility would fall upon Kerrville Bus Systems. Kerrville Bus Systems, at its sole discretion, or at its sole exposure, is going to have to provide the transportation, the personnel, the equipment, the materials, et cetera. We're providing our site for them to utilize. What I'm most concerned about in regards to this particular pilot program, not that I'm more concerned that it's going to be so successful, we're going to have to find other spots and/or we're going to have to look at adding additional parking to that current location. Since they're the ones that are primarily responsible from a financial standpoint, the initial part of the agreement is tailored where they can get out after a 6-month operational period. So the contract reads that after 6 months, that during the second 6-month time period, they, with an advanced 60-day notice, they could get out of the agreement. Then, after the second 6-month time period, either party could, with an advance 180 days notice, either party could get out of the overall program. So I believe this is a great opportunity for us to get a program started. It is a pilot program. If we're not happy after a year's time period, we have the ability to get out. If it's not operating successfully after the first 6 months, they have an opportunity to get out. So I think it's a good option for both of us here with very little exposure on the city's behalf. A little bit about Kerrville Bus Company. They were founded in 1929. They have over 80 years of experience providing motor coach service. If you go to their website, you'll see that they're providing service to universities in and around Texas, transportation back and forth to those universities for college students. Previously, they provide transportation for the Woodlands Park and Ride service in North Houston, back and forth to Houston every day, using some of these same locations that we're talking about. So I think this is a great opportunity, and again, recommend approval of moving forward. Tonight, we have several representatives from the Kerrville Bus Corporation that are here in attendance. Sean Sexton is here, and he can answer any questions from the corporation standpoint in regards to the programming and services are the city's responsibility. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have, and we're pleased to present this to you and open for any questions that you might have at this time.
Okay, let's open up for some questions if you have one.
Mr. Branson?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Branson, number one, security for the park and ride area. What is our plan for security for that?
For that particular facility, just like any of our parks, we have a plan to provide security at those during the times when it's needed most. In essence, what we'll do is there will be patrol in that particular area. They may or may not be assigned. I don't want to go over the specific details, but we'll be able to cover the security needs for that park just like any other park that we have.
Okay, and then I have one other question. The schedule on time frames for pickup and drop off. Where did these times come from? I don't know if maybe the first pickup time is probably early enough. I'm not really sure. I'm just questioning where the times came from.
Well, they're very similar to what you would see at other park and ride facilities, start at or about that same time. The goal here is we want to get maximum participation. And yes, you probably could start a little bit earlier. However, from a traffic standpoint, I think when you have the biggest issues are between these particular time periods. So we're looking at trying to get the maximum amount of people during a specific time period each day and get them to and from Pearland.
Okay, and I think, go ahead, I'll let you say it.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think on some of these time frames, you're not going to get to the Med Center in 30 minutes. Not going to happen. If you leave at 7 o'clock, you're not making it to the Med Center by 7:30.
Well, as you can see, they're 15-minute headways, and that's the industry standard for park and ride services, whether it be in Pearland, whether it be in the Woodlands, whether it be at Bay Area. That's essentially what they do. Now, I can assure you, and Kerrville may want to have a comment or two later on this, but they're going to put the buses in places to do what needs to be done during that time period to get the people there. And this is just a schedule right now that we've got as a draft schedule. That doesn't mean that it couldn't change based on the demand, but you have to start with something, and we think this is a good start.
Okay, I'm just talking about the traffic. It's going to take you longer than 30 minutes to get downtown and at 7 o'clock in the morning. Unless you're going to be able to fly over all the traffic. Okay, thank you.
You passed, and do you have comments?
No comment, Mayor.
Okay. And for Ardo?
I would love to hear from Kerrville, but before that, I want to say to staff, thank you for proving me wrong. When we talked about this years ago, when we looked at the $300,000 option, and when Metro backed out, I really didn't think I'd see a time where there was something that was feasible for the city to do to provide this service to our residents. And I think this is the first thing we've seen that is feasible, and I believe it's very feasible for us to do that at a very low cost compared to everything else that we've seen. So thank you to Kerrville, and thank you to staff.
Councilor Little?
Just a couple of quick comments on the contract. I guess this is the lawyer coming out in me, but whenever you assume responsibility for security in an agreement, you potentially open yourself up for liability in the event the security is not there and something happens. So along the same lines as Gary, I was just a little concerned about how we were going to provide security at the location. You've already touched on that. My second comment was on contracts contingent on approval by the City of Houston and someone else, I believe, Metro. We anticipate any problems getting those approvals?
I don't foresee any problems there. As I mentioned earlier, Kerrville provided similar service from the Woodlands. However, we do need to work with them, and that's really all that this agreement talks about, is us working with them to gain those approvals. They have all the necessary permits to operate on the road, et cetera, and I think it's more than anything else, I think it's just common courtesy, and I'm optimistic that there won't be any issues there.
Thank you.
Perez?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I believe this same thing. It kind of what you just touched on is that they have the ability to park on our facility and drive on public roads, stop on public roads to drop people off. So I don't anticipate that we're going to be trying to use any Metro facilities downtown as part of the park and ride. Is that correct?
We would. Actually, I think we'd probably use some of the stops along the route, and then at the main center, I believe it's 1200 Main Street, probably use that as the head point coming back this direction.
So we would absolutely have to have Metro's cooperation.
Right.
To be able
And I will say, again, they've done this service before with another community, so I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we'll get approval again.
So a couple other things. One, I think this is fantastic. Again, I share Councilmember Ordino's sentiment that I never thought it'd be a possibility we'd have such, for lack of a better term, such a favorable deal to Pearland. My questions kind of relate to the payment process. So and maybe this is better for Kerrville. How is it that y'all are paid for this service? Is it a subscription service? Do they pay for each ride? Is there some sort of, what's the mechanism for y'all getting taken care of?
And sir, can you please introduce yourself and your address?
Sean Sexton, 1430 East Houston Street, San Antonio, Texas, 78202. I am the Associate General Manager for Kerrville Bus Company. When it comes to the payment mechanism, it's going to be pretty similar to everything that's out there now. There's a single pay-per-use that will be available, as well as a monthly pay-per-use, essentially card. Everything we'll do is ideally going to be moved towards kind of e-ticketing. where they'll have an app available on their phone where they can purchase it directly there if they just need a one-way ride. We will allow cash purchases as well as a discounted monthly rider card, similar to how we operated the Woodlands.
So it's wholly independent of the city. We don't get involved at all in the payment or the debt service or anything. That's all.
Correct, absolutely.
I think we've touched on the liability. I think there's some concerns there, maybe some things that we need to tweak, and when the liability gets transferred over from us to them, I think maybe a Thursday packet just to clarify things would be fine. Nothing that's going to, I think it's a pretty sweet deal for Pearland, so at some point a liability is going to transfer, so maybe just clarification of when it does. One thing I'm curious of, is there a possibility, do you have a model for expansion of this service for special events, for the rodeo, particularly for Texans games? I know there'll be some complications with that, with how much this parking lot is used on the weekends. But let's say in the future, if we have a dedicated parking lot just for this, is there a possibility to expand the service for those type of special events?
Yeah, absolutely. Performa initially was just the park and ride service, but the way that we have our website built and the capabilities that we have with the equipment and the actual drivers, yeah, we can definitely expand that out, especially because those are kind of weekend events, and they tend to operate outside of our normal business hours. So those are kind of perfect add-ons to that situation.
And maybe not to get into too much of the weeds, would that just be something separately negotiated, or would y'all take a look at it and say, hey, look, we think park and ride's working great. We think we want to expand the service. We think there's a financial model to add some more revenue for us, or would that be something that we would have to approach? Or have y'all done that in the past? Do you have a model that works for that?
Not directly to that, no. We've done some shuttle work, essentially on conventions and stuff like that. So it's kind of similar to that, just but one-off events. So I think it would be definitely, this is going to be independent of that, but it'd be definitely something we would want to consider.
I'd love to get to the point where we need to catch traction with the park and ride first, so I don't want to get out of my skis. But I know that Reed Road and a lot of things along 288, they have full parking lots for people that need to go to the rodeo. If we could save our citizens that ride up there, it gets pretty congested on Reed and some of the other park and rides. I think that'd be a great benefit to our citizens. So maybe after we get a year or two under our belt, we feel this is successful, assuming it is. I'd love to engage a conversation about that. Other than that, I think this is a great service. I'd love to see it progress. I love the idea of the buses being monikered specifically to show that it's a Pearland service. So as we're in downtown Houston, we're advertising Pearland on a regular basis. So I think it's a great opportunity for our citizens. I hope that and I expect that this is going to work out well for both of us.
Rowans.
Yes, sir. Mic on up there so you can hear me. Just quick, I guess you're going to be using the Metro's park and ride, our facilities downtown, to go down in their stops and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. So we would try to utilize the exact same stops that the Woodlands Park and Ride's using. Historically, that's what we've used. They've proven very successful. In kind of discussion with the Metro side of things, it makes it really easy because when we would be utilizing it for the Pearland citizens is when the Woodlands would be essentially on the opposite side of the street, since we're doing contraflow, right? So we don't anticipate any issues there whatsoever. We've worked with them directly. Woodlands currently use the stops now for the similar service that we want to offer here. So we think there'd be zero problems with that.
I know Metro's in a kind of a cash crunch right now, so I thought they may want to charge you for using their facility down there to stop and park and ride. The last thing is, I see where you start at 5:45, but what's the time frame coming back? I see on the evening route is 1500 or 3 o'clock on there. Say a person catches that to go downtown at 9 o'clock at the medical center for a doctor's appointment. They don't have to wait till 3 o'clock in the afternoon to come back, do they?
3 o'clock would be the first one coming back. Initially, this is going to be designed more for the worker heading down that way. We're going to be monitoring the ridership portion of this pretty closely. All of our buses are GPS. We'll be looking at the time frames for the schedules. Initially, what we have is just kind of a blanket, hey, this is how we want to operate it. But we'll go ahead and work with those times to get a more realistic expectation of how long each departure will take in the traffic flow. And then if there is room or avenue there for maybe afternoon, essentially departures coming back, if the doctor's appointment thing does make sense, I mean, we'll definitely explore those options.
Yeah, because it looks like if you go down at 5:45 and you just deadhead back at the empty bus.
Right, so
Going back to Pearland.
operationally, the way that works is typically your first 4 to 6 buses will go ahead and pull that 5:45 or whichever it is that they're coming in, and then come back, deadhead back to Pearland to pull that one of those last departures. 8:30, 8:45. So one driver or 5 drivers or so will pull about 2 routes or so in the morning.
Okay, so you're going to have, what, 5 buses in or whatever?
Initially, I think we're at 12 with
12.
one spare on site.
Okay, that was my only concern about people if they're not working down there, but they have an appointment at the medical center. If they have a 8 or 9 o'clock appointment, that's, for a 45-minute appointment, they still have to hang around till 3 o'clock.
Yeah, definitely something we'll consider. And if there's definitely a ridership demand there, then we would look to implement that, absolutely.
Councilmember Owens, what I would say is they're going to look at all options, but that's not the initial intent of what we're proposing here. This is truly for those riders that either work in the med center or work downtown, and they will take that each day in the morning and come back in the evening. It's not really, at this point, it's not designed for appointments, those types of things.
Probability is they're not going to understand that. So, on there when they go out to try to get on, unless it's something is put out. They can Uber home. It's probably cheaper than being down there, though. So, but that's what I was wondering, based upon that on the morning and evening routes, that you don't make much money when you're deadhead back.
Right, absolutely.
That's what Metro's problem is.
I think one of the questions we'd have is you'd be probably exiting onto Beltway 8 or eventually to 288. Of course, those won't be finished until next year, July of next year. Does that give you time to build up and put in place the facility and the program?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest points of this pilot program is to really see how much demand there is and where the ridership's coming from. The big thing with the park and ride or the commuter services is you need to be where they live, right? You need to be within that small basic commute for them to get from their home, to leave their car, and then come downtown. And that's what we want to do, and this pilot program will help us find that.
Okay, super. Councilman Reed? Okay.
I got a few questions, Mayor. Any idea on what the rates would be?
Currently, we have it costed at $650 for a round trip or for a one-way. That's going to be right in line with what we see with the Woodlands. More or less, that's where we're going to be at on a one-way. There'll be a discounted rate on a monthly pass, which typically is 20% off of what that overall daily commuter, but we haven't finalized that, but more so in our model, that's where we're at right now.
All right, and can staff give us an idea on the size, how many parking spots we have at the park currently and how many we expect to use?
We have right at, and I'm not counting the handicap parking spaces, there's approximately 400 spaces there, and I would think that we would allocate about 350 of those specifically for that, and designate that area specifically for park and ride services as the agreement calls for, and then the other remaining spots during the daytime hours when the park is not utilized, the parking lot's not utilized, those park users could use the area not designated for the park and ride.
Would this ever affect the programming of the park? I know we say daytime hours, but when we look at the evening routes getting back, I guess the latest at 7:30, I'm thinking in multi-day tournaments or something like that.
It's something that we're going to have to monitor. I don't believe it's going to be a big issue, because what will happen is starting at roughly 4 o'clock, people will be arriving back in Pearland, and they'll be getting into their vehicles and they'll be leaving the site. It's something that we'll have to monitor. We only have an infinite number of spaces there. And, for every field, you can figure out on an average a minimum of about 30 people. So it can add up pretty quickly, but I believe that this is a good option for us. We also are looking at other possibilities. If the need is there to expand on site is a possibility with some non-paved areas, as well as looking at other locations. But if we get to that point, then I think we're in a good place.
I agree.
John, do you feel like that we could have some council input, update on this at, say, 90 to 100 days down the way?
Absolutely.
As we progress and make progress on it. Okay.
Mayor, one more question. I guess on security, I mean, I heard your response, that if I was going to break into some cars, this would be a great place to do it. And I don't know that we, well, I think currently we're I don't think anybody would say we're overstaffed in PD, so I'd hate to see us stretched even more thin. So maybe when it comes budget time, I think it makes sense to look at some additional patrol, whatever we're going to do out in that area. I think we need to be cognizant of that. That's all.
Second feature report. Good. Any other comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I actually did want to say thank you to John, Trent, and Clay. You know, we had been working on trying to get this going sometime, I think year before last. So thank you all for your work on this. And kind of off of what Councilmember Carbone just mentioned, I want us to make sure that we remember that this is still a park, and you know, it's still used for that. I'm not a fan at all of any weekend use. You know, when it comes to that, I'd rather use the mall parking lot. I mean, if we see that it is growing big enough, you know, I don't think we should have to wait a year. So I'm hoping that this agreement doesn't put us inside of a year and we can't make moves within that year. In other words, if we see that, you know, we're getting an overrun or an abundance of folks that are using the park and ride when, you know, August, September timeframe, and we're getting 400 cars or 350 cars or whatever the limit is, that we can start looking around to move it somewhere else immediately and not wait that year. You know, there's baseball games, there's stuff that happens there during the week, and so again, it's still our park. We need to recognize it as a park. It's not a park and ride. You're just using it, you know, for that purpose for right now. But the mall has much more parking space, and you know, it's probably a lot better. You know, and then obviously we have to get the mall's consent, and so that's not something that the city has control over. So.
Good. Any other comment for council?
Just one, Mayor. I do also want to thank staff for this. We sat with Metro and was talking with Metro on, you know, any kind of ideas. It was pretty evident that that wasn't going to work. So thanks for finding another option, and I look forward to seeing this go through as a pilot program.
Good and shivered. John, do you have any wrap-up comments at this point?
No, sir.
Good, okay. That information wrapped up. Let's move to item number 3 on our agenda. And I'll ask Clay Pearson if he'd lead us a discussion of this.
Mayor, I think we do have a resolution for your consideration on 2.
We need to vote.
We have a motion and a second.
Oh, that's right. We just went sailing right on past that, didn't we? We had a motion second on the floor. Secretary?
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ordno?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay. Now, with that information wrapped up, moving to item number 3, we have a council for discussion regarding alternative plans designed for retiree health insurance. Mr. Clay, did you want to make a few comments?
Just to set this up a little bit, our human resource staff has really had the lead, and this is something else that we're pleased to present tonight for consideration. You know, we're very cognizant of balancing finances, but also providing a package for our employees that is sustainable and attractive. We've got interest in retaining talent in our organization, also attracting. And we believe that with the help of IPS, there's an option for us to provide this really gap retiree health care insurance for employees that have been with specifically the City of Pearland for a set amount of time to provide them a very positive health care option for that gap only between 60 and 65 when Medicare kicks in. It's not open-ended. And so for that limitation, something we asked a lot of questions about, obviously concerned about. It is complex, but again, I think it's something that we should take a serious look at for implementing to be able to provide our employees. It's something else we can offer them. So again, Michelle's been working with IPS, and I'll ask her to make the introduction and have the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. As Mr. Pearson indicated, we engaged with IPS a little over a year ago. The main catalyst for engaging with the IPS had to do with meeting the GASB 75 requirement, reporting requirement that will be effective at the end of this fiscal year. However, while we were looking at that, we wanted to do our due diligence and see about looking at the possibility of designing our retiree program for health insurance to reward those individuals who had dedicated their time and commitment to the organization. So we went in to the plan design review with those two things in mind. So what we're looking for tonight is we're looking for some feedback from council regarding the plan designs that will be discussed this evening, with the idea that there would be a future resolution on a future agenda for official adoption and approval of the actual plan design. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark Wardo, who is with IPS.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. How are y'all doing this evening? Thank you for having me. So I appreciate being here this late to talk about actuarial stuff. I'm sure this is.
Would you mind give us your name?
Can you hear me? Sorry, sir.
Yeah, do want to make sure I get that.
Oh, sure. My name is Mark Wahardo, and I'm a credentialed actuary. I live at 10357 Bel Air Drive in Dallas, Texas. Just to give you a little bit of background about me, I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's always a pleasure to work with a city that really takes this seriously. As Mr. Pearson said and Ms. Graham, they took a lot of time to look at all the proposals that we put together. We really sat down and worked together as a team. They know the city very well, and the coming events that are expected for the city. So to talk a little bit about that, when I'm looking at the executive summary, looking over the next 10 years, about a quarter of the current city employees will be eligible to retire, and that's under the TMRS eligibility, which is 20 years of service or age 60 with 5 years of service. Now, those participants who leave around the age 50 mark are not necessarily retiring. They're leaving the city and typically going to work elsewhere for a different type of employment. And the majority of those people that leave do not take the city's retiree welfare benefits. I think currently we have just under 10 retirees under a population of about 700. So looking at all of this in preparation for the new accounting standards that are coming at the end of this current fiscal year, as Ms. Graham mentioned, they decided to take a wholehearted review of the benefits offered to see if there was something better that the city may provide. So just to review the current plan design, the eligibility to receive retiree medical benefits from the city is the same as their retirement benefits under TMRS. And again, that's 60 with 5 years of service or straight 20 years of service. That service can be earned through any entity within TMRS, so it doesn't necessarily have to be with the city. The benefit, so the active employees and the retirees are eligible for the same three plans. There's two L.L.C plans, and then there's a high deductible health plan. Those benefits would not change for the GAP participants that we're talking about, so those participants that retire prior to age 65. The premium that is set for the retirees is essentially the active premium with no city subsidy. So whereas employees get a heavy subsidy from the city for their coverage as an active employee. When a person retires, they pay what's typically called the full premium, the COBRA rate, if you will. We'll get a little into the weeds on the difference between that and how the accounting standard treats the full cost. So with the retiree contributions being essentially the full premium, there's actually a different standard that we have to look at under the accounting rules, and that is because the premium for active and retirees under the city are based on a blend of the active and retiree experience. So you take the active medical costs plus the retiree medical costs and divide that by the all employees, and so you get a blended cost basis. And as you can imagine, retirees are more expensive than actives, but because there's less than 10 compared to 700, the impact on of the retirees is very minimal. However, under the accounting standard, we cannot look at the subsidy that is being provided by the active employees, meaning they are bringing down the true cost of the retirees' cost. And so when we do the actuarial evaluation, which we just completed for fiscal year ending 17, we have to strip out the active experience. And so we're looking at the true experience of the retirees, which is typically 200 to 220% greater than a blended premium. So essentially we're talking doubling of that premium. So while the retiree is paying the full cost from a premium standpoint, under the accounting standard, they're only paying half of the cost, essentially. The other half being what we call the implicit subsidy. So it's this phantom amount if you're not familiar with the accounting standard and how these benefits are structured. And so that is the liability currently under GASB 45 for the retiree medical plan. So what we proposed initially is to move away from the implicit cost subsidy. So instead of using the blended cost, we would use a true retiree cost, which would increase, obviously, the cost basis for retirees. And our goal is not to further reduce the number of retirees coming onto the plan by making it more expensive, but by being a little more transparent in how the actual costs are for the city, and then replacing that implicit subsidy with what we call an explicit subsidy. So we actually define the amount that the city will pay on behalf of retirees for coverage either with the city, or if they decide to take that benefit that they earned with them to possibly use that for a healthcare plan from another employer, or coverage that they can obtain on their own. So the subsidy that they would take with them could only be used for healthcare coverage. And so we'll get into the plan designs here. The first plan design that we looked at was on a points-based schedule, and the points essentially mean it's their age plus service at retirement is the amount of points that they have. And the service is based on city service. So no service from outside of the City of Pearland would be taken into account. And for eligibility and for benefit service, that service would have to be continuous. So if there was a break in service, an employee left and came back, that service would not be bridged. They would start over with their service. And that's currently the intention. So under the plan, the actual benefits would not change. So the underlying three plans would not change. It's just the cost sharing between the city and the retiree. And so if you look at the chart that I have on the lower left box, the retiree contributions, if the participant had less than 65 points, the city would not pick up any of that cost, and the retiree would have to pay the full portion. But once you have 65 or more points, the city starts picking up a portion of that coverage, topping out at 85 points, so 85 or more points. So if you think about how that might work out, 60 with 25 years of service would get you 85 points. And so a participant that retired at age 60 with 25 years of service with the city would receive a city subsidy of 65% of that total premium, and the retiree would have to balance the other 35%. And that's on retiree-only coverage, meaning if they decided to cover a dependent, the dependent is the full responsibility of the retiree. Now, we do have a qualification that you cannot earn a city subsidy if you retire before age 50 or you have less than 10 years of service. So you have to be at least age 50 to get this benefit. This is intended to be a retiree benefit, and most people that leave at age 50 are not truly retiring. As I mentioned earlier, there's also a portable subsidy option. So if they do not want to take coverage with the city or the city's plans, they can take a percentage of the benefit that they earned and use that for alternate coverage. So maybe they have a spouse that has coverage, maybe they have moved to a different employer and can take advantage of that coverage, or if they're using the exchanges, they could use those benefits. And so out to the right, you see how much the subsidy is, and the percentages out to the side are the percentage of the current premium, just to give you a sense. So the person with 85 or more points would receive $460 a month, which is about 80% of the current total coverage cost of the KC 80% plan. So the L.L.C plan with the 80%. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, what's the 40 next to that?
Yeah, so that's when we move to the full cost. So it essentially doubles the true cost, or the blended cost. So it would be 40% of that cost. When you double the cost and then look at the percentage, it's actually paying for 40% of that cost. So it's 80% of the current L.L.C cost, or 40% when we move from the blended cost basis to the GASB 45 full cost basis, is how you think about that.
And this is for the employee only?
Correct. That's correct.
And you said for the city services, so if they were with another city for a period of time under the same situation, and they only had 10 years to retire, and then they're retired, they'd only get 10%? Would the other out from another city add to that?
Correct. So that service would not be recognized in their benefit service. So it would be totally excluded. Okay. Moving on to plan design number 2. So moving from a points, which again is age plus service, we're looking at strictly service at retirement. And so again, there's no change to the underlying benefit for those that are pre-65. We are, again, just taking into account service. And on the prior page, you had to be at least 50 or 10 years of service. This is saying you have to be at least age 60 to earn a benefit and have at least 10 years of service with the city. And this is what we call our true retirement scenario. So those that leave prior to age 60 in general are not retiring. They're moving on for employment elsewhere. And so because of the delay to age 60, we can increase the benefit to be a relatively good benefit. So if you look at the bottom left quadrant with the retiree contribution subsidy, if you have 20 or more years of service, you see that the city is actually picking up the full cost of coverage. And you have to have at least 10, so the second line there, 10 to 15 years of service, the city's picking up 70%, and the retiree would pick up 30. And for the 15 to 20 bucket, the city would be picking up 85%. So this very significant subsidies by the city. But again, it's helpful to have the delayed age because of the cost of healthcare for pre-65 retirees. We also have a portable subsidy on this one. And so you see the dollar amounts that they would be eligible for. So for someone with 20 years or more of service, they would have a benefit of $1,000 a month that they could use for service elsewhere. And again, you have the percentages out to the side. So 172% of the current KC 80% plan, or when we go to the retiree only basis, they would get 86% of that.
It shows on for 20 plus years, $1,000 a month.
Correct.
On a retirement. Does that have any thing on escalation cost?
No. So for someone, once they retire, that benefit's going to stay stagnant until they reach 65, but the cost will increase until that person retires. So as the cost of healthcare increases, we'll relook at that subsidy. But once they retire, that amount is going to be flat.
So every year we'll look at this and increase it.
Correct. Any other questions on the overall plan design?
On the subsidy, do they have to prove that they're using the subsidy for medical purposes and
Yes,
not
absolutely.
putting it in their pocket?
Correct. There's no new cars or anything. So how does that work? How do they get the subsidy? Is it a check that's provided to them on a monthly basis, or do we pay to a service and they prove to us who their insurance provider is? Typically, it's a reimbursement, but that can be discussed. But there would certainly be some sort of a document that they would have to provide that it's creditable coverage and also it's true healthcare coverage.
How many people and how many departments are we going to have to create to manage all this?
It's not that difficult.
That's for staff. How many departments and how many people are we going to have to hire and create to manage this program?
Little to none. I mean, we manage a program for 800 employees now. And so this won't, it's once you get involved, you have an open enrollment, you sign up for it and administer it. It's not burdensome.
We have to do the calculation anyway for our valuation of the plan. So once someone retires, we'll need that information. So us, the actuary, will do that.
And what if a person reaches the 65 age and they accept Medicare and Medicaid? Does this amount decrease?
It goes away. There is no subsidy when someone becomes Medicare eligible. Now, what we plan on providing right now is just the 3 benefit plans that we mentioned. We're going to add in a Medicare Advantage plan, which those premiums are significantly lower if you're familiar with those products. There would be no subsidy, but that would be an option for those retirees. So there is no subsidy when someone becomes Medicare eligible because there is coverage elsewhere, but they will have an option to take the Medicare Advantage plan.
Yeah, I'm at the age, I got that. So it is with Kelsey, and it cost me $270 a month and my wife $270 a month on there. But the Kelsey plan is a good plan.
Yeah, quality products. Yeah. So theoretically, on option 2, the worst case scenario for us is we'd have a 60-year-old who retires with 20 years of service. We pay them $1,000 a month for 5 years. They grow per year as needed, but once they hit 65, whether they choose Medicaid or not, as long as they've reached eligibility, they get dropped from this. Correct. Okay. Correct. And if they're eligible for Medicare prior to age 65, they would not get a subsidy. And it's true on both options, correct? That we're just we're capping at 65. Correct. After that, their eligibility drops them from our rolls. Yes. The whole goal here is to take care of them before they have coverage elsewhere.
So at age 65, they're dropped off the system?
At least by age 65. Some can go out earlier. But currently, under the current rules for Medicare, age 65, everybody's eligible unless they didn't buy into the system, which that's a totally different area. And I'm not sure that we have any participants within the city population that did not pay into Medicare up front. That would be something we'd have to discuss. So balancing Plan 1 and Plan 2, what would be the pro and the con between the two? Would it be one leaves us open for exposure for a longer period, but may not necessarily be as costly? The other one has us exposed for less of a period of time, but in the end, we could end up paying more for a 60-year-old retiree at 20 years than we would with the other plan. Is that kind of for the most part. So with the second plan, you're able to provide a better benefit because you're delaying retirement to age 60. By using the first alternative plan, by letting people leave as early as 50, they have 15 years that they could get a subsidy, and so that subsidy has to be reduced because of that. And so that's really where the rub is between the two. Michelle, do you have a preference, or has there been any
study amongst staff about which of these may be preferential to them?
Yes, I believe later on in the presentation, you'll find the staff recommendation is actually plan design number 2.
Okay.
Correct. And when we look at the projected cost, you'll see the differences. Okay. So just to get a little bit into the weeds, as part of our actual evaluations, we actually have a participation assumption. So what percentage of those, when they're eligible to retire, take coverage? So the blue box has the current assumptions. So if someone leaves prior to age 50, 15% are assumed to leave, of which the number of participants that leave prior to age 50 is minuscule. Age 50 to 59, we assume 25% take the city coverage. And for those that retire at age 59 or later, we assume that just over half take the city coverage. So that's in the baseline valuation. When we move to the new plan design options, under the point scenario, which again, that's age plus service, 5% are assumed to take the city coverage, and 95% are assumed to take that portable subsidy option. And that's just because the cost of the city's plan is going to double when we go to the retiree-only cost, whereas coverage elsewhere may still be on that blended cost basis. And so the value of that subsidy is going to be greater by moving to another entity. So when we move to the 75 to 85 points, we're assuming 15% take the city's coverage, and at the maximum point bucket, we're going to half and half. When we look at plan design 2, which that's the service only, we start with a 50-50%. So half would take the city's plan, half would take the portable subsidy, and then 75% under the 15 to 25 years, or 20 years of service, excuse me, would take the city coverage, and 25% would take the subsidy, and 20 plus years, the vast majority were expected to take the city's coverage. Okay. And so just to give you an idea on the rates, so looking on the left-hand side, this is the current rate structure, which is the blended cost. So for the L.L.C 80 plan, let's see, the second set of boxes, the total cost that the retiree is currently paying is $582 a month. If you follow that line over to the right, when we go to the retiree, true cost retiree coverage, so no subsidy being applied because of the active experience, the premium would actually be $1152. And so the difference between those two is what under the accounting standard is referred to as the implicit subsidy. Okay. And so when we costed this out, the red bars are the current plan. This is the do nothing scenario. So currently what we're looking at here, this is the OPEB liability. So this is what will sit on your balance sheet, city's balance sheet, starting for fiscal year ending 2018. So this is under the new GASB 75 standard, which is effective during this fiscal year. So at $5.5 million as the current liability at 9/30/17, at the end of this fiscal year, it's estimated to increase to $6 million. When we go to the out year of fiscal year ending 2022, that amount has grown to $8.5 million. Under alternative 1, that is the yellow-orangish middle bar. And as you can see there, the savings is some, but it's not near as significant as the green. And that's the alternative 2, the service-based only. And again, that's because of the deferring the retirement age to age 60. So even by providing that large of a benefit, you see that almost initially the benefit goes well under to what the current balance sheet is under GASB 45. So whereas the city is expecting to take a increase in their balance sheet moving to the new standard, if they were to take the alternative 2, they would actually see a decrease in their balance sheet liability. And then the out year, the liability is 5.6, which is at the level of the current plan in today. So serious decrease, but a very material benefit. We look at the accounting expense, so this is the expense that you have to accrue during the year under the new accounting standard. It's currently $629,000. That will continue to escalate to $840,000. There's two different colors there, and that's because there's two components to the expense under the accounting standard. There's the the interest on the plan liability, and then there's the amount that represents the accrual of benefits for your active employees. So because this benefit is earned during the working lifetime of a participant, each year that participant earns a year of service, they accrue a sliver of that liability. And so that's what that service cost represents. When we go to the new plan, that expense would decrease from $670,000 to an expected $436,000. Under the new accounting standard, there is a provision for plan changes that are made. That amount, that reduction in the liability, actually gets taken as a reduction to your expense in full for the year that it goes in place. So the reduction in liability that was on the prior side of $6 million to 4.1, so $1.9 million would actually be taken as a credit during the expense. So the expense would actually be negative in the first year because of the plan change, but then it would come back up to 461 as the expected expense and continue to slightly increase. And here's detail on those items if you ever need some sleeping material. Okay, open to any questions or if I need to clarify anything.
Thank you, Mayor. So when you go into this OPEB liability, this is not a real. I mean, this is an actuarial-based calculation because theoretically, your retired individuals, well, the current plan, retired individuals can pay at the blended rate for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So this liability is saying they're old, they're retired, they should be more expensive to provide health care for. So we've come up with this escalating liability. So, I mean, right now, if we do nothing, even though we have these liabilities and all this expense, everything on the books, our cash flow is not changing. I mean,
the current or the under the new
under
plan?
the current.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so because of GASB 75 and the way we're presenting it, we're going to go back and reconsider all this, which is maddening, but that's where we're at. If you go back to the comparison of rate structures.
Sure.
So right now, a retiree would pay $582. Next year, if we do nothing, they're going to pay $1152 because GASB 75 forced us to calculate this.
That's not necessarily correct. We don't have to go to the retiree-only cost.
Yeah.
We were saying in concert with the new benefits,
We could.
we would recommend that so that it's more transparent, so that your current retirees understand the benefit that they're actually receiving by the city.
Yeah. Okay. Or we could call it $7,152 and give them a $7,000 subsidy. I mean, yeah. I'm just trying to get my head around because everybody's staring at me, and hopefully we can, just so we can understand that this is all. I mean, I appreciate what you do, but you're an actuary, and yeah.
I will say, healthcare costs are real, especially with retirees, and the pre-65 portion is the most unpredictable of the healthcare coverage. Typically, the number of participants that are on pre-65 retiree is dwindling. So prior to the accounting standards under FASB, it used to be 2/3 of employers would provide retiree medical coverage. That is now under 1/3 that provide that. So it's a benefit that's certainly going away, but it's certainly not a benefit that is not appreciated.
And I guess and maybe a question for staff, under option 1 or 2, our baseline is that 1152, right?
Correct.
So I mean, we're doubling the cost for the employees, then saying, "Good job, here's a retirement benefit."
Yes, if they stay with the city, or they could take the subsidy and use that for an entity that maybe didn't double that cost. So there's an alternative, there's an option for both people that stay and both people want to take that benefit. So there is a true benefit.
And Councilmember Carbone, I would say that's an excellent point. We have, I don't remember the exact number, but within the next 10 years, we have a huge number of employees across the organization that have the ability to either retire now or within that time period. And so one aspect of this is that when you have to replace those employees, typically you bring in another employee, depending on the position, at or about the same rate. You've got to train them before they get on board. It might be 6 months or a year before they're functioning at the level that the previous employee was. So what this actually does is it helps to retain those employees that have been with the organization for a long time. They provided excellent service, and we want to continue to support their effort for this time period. And we're talking about, roughly a 5-year time period from the time they turn 60 to 65, and then they would go off of that program. And that's the worst case scenario. So it is an advantage for keeping those long-term valued employees.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure I was thinking about it right, because initially I thought this was a new benefit to help our employees, but really we're I don't know if you can say screwing them, but we're screwing them on the front end and then saying, oh, here's a little bit of relief. Am I looking at that right? And we're doubling the cost, doubling the cost from the 582 to 1152, and then giving them some relief off of that.
I would again say it's more transparent because the city is truly paying roughly that double cost. And so when you're saying that the retiree pays the full benefit, they think they're paying, the total cost of that coverage, when in actuality, they're only paying half of that. So it's showing them what the true cost basis is, and then providing a subsidy of what the city is going to pay of that cost.
Let me see if I can understand what kind of conceptualize what you're saying, because I think I understand, but maybe I'm completely lost. The 582, the reason that there is a implicit benefit is because they're part of a plan. They get a reduced rate because they're part of that plan, as opposed to if they went out and bought it by themselves, correct?
Sure.
So the implicit benefit is that they are able to be a part of a plan. The transparency is that you're actually getting 1,100 plus in benefit, because if you were to be on your own, you wouldn't be able to get the benefit of the discounted rate because you're a part of a plan.
So that's the group insurance benefit that I think you're alluding to, and there is part of that in that. But if they were to take retiree coverage, even if it was a group plan, but it was just pre-65 retirees, that benefit, that cost would be double. If you were to go to the exchange, for instance, and try to purchase insurance on the exchange, it's based on your age and the zip code that you're in, and that changes, every year, and every year of age, and so it's significant.
The implicit nature of it is that you're benefited by being a part of Pearland's retirement plan.
Yes.
If you were not on Pearland's retirement plan, you would have much higher cost of coverage, so that's the implicit benefit.
Right.
So what we're saying is that transparency is this is your full benefit when you take not just our cost or your cost to be on this plan, but also the savings that you're getting were you to be on your own.
You're correct.
Councilors, if I could just add something I said at the outset, I just want to reemphasize. I think part of this is converting this implicit subsidy, which is real, to this explicit subsidy, and targeting it better for employees that have served the city of Pearland. Because right now, if you come into the city of Pearland at age 55, you serve till 60, and you've got other service credits other places, you're going to get that same retiree benefit access that we've got right now. But with this recommendation, we'd be able to provide very explicitly for the people who have served the city of Pearland up to 100%. So there wouldn't be any payment if you served for us 20 years, and it'd just be for that gap between 60 and 65. It's not open-ended forever. So I think it's more targeted in terms of our City of Pearland employees, providing that benefit, and for this area, and converting this open-ended subsidy into something very real for our employees.
With the contract of the presentation, it makes sense. You're basically pulling the curtain back and giving the employees a better understanding of what their actual benefits are and simplifying their decision making.
Correct.
So that they're less confused in a fog of, if I retire now, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to get me to Medicare?
Sure.
And looking at it, we're only talking about employees that retire. This isn't changing our employees
No.
That are still working. I will say GASB has become a bad word to me because I was introduced to it in the audit committee, and it may be one of the most vague, uncomprehendable things I've ever had explained to me. With that said, I'm going to ask a question that may make this even worse. On page 15, because personally I'm leaning towards 2, and my reasons are I like the fact that it's based off service to the city. I think that's what we should be looking at rewarding. You know, it's something I can look at next year. We would have a max of 59 employees. They'd be in for 5 years. To me, it's just much more concrete, easier to plan for. And that was my concern initially when I heard about retirement insurance was, how do we know how long, the retirees are going to live? And to me, that got difficult. So once I talked to staff and understood this, I do like 2, but on page 15, we show in 2018 a negative annual expense of like 1.3 million. I'm trying to understand that.
Sure. And that's these provisions are very arcane, and yes, it's a privilege to be an expert, and nobody understands what I'm talking about. So because you can, under the standard, you have to take the present value of that difference. So what's the change in the current plan to the new plan? Whatever that difference is, you either add or subtract it to the expense in that year. So to the extent we are reducing benefits, the present value of those benefits by $1.8 million, you get a credit of that amount in the year the plan change is made. And so what would have been an expense of $450,000 roughly, you take off that negative amendment of $1.8 million for a resulting cost of negative 1.4, or a credit in the current year, but that's a one-time credit, and so after that, you would continue on. So to the extent you made changes again, you would take an additional increase or decrease depending on what that plan value change is.
Okay, so in actual dollars spent by the city, are we looking at the service cost and interest? Is that the estimated cost that we're actually looking at budgeting for?
So the actual cash cost is, and I don't have that readily.
I like the alarm. We
Is my time up?
No, so it's not the service and interest cost?
No, those are present value functions, so those are present value of cash flows. The interest represents the interest on your liability. So just like if you had a bank account, what's the interest that you would expect to earn during that year? This is the interest on that liability. We're assuming a 4% discount rate, and so it's that interest.
If staff could get us those estimates in a Thursday packet or whatever, I'd be interested in seeing what we're actually looking at budgeting for.
Sure.
But at this point, I am in favor of the plan 2.
At the same time, I mean, that expense is going to be on this side, but we should see the offsetting implicit subsidy on the larger group as a whole. Right? It's all yeah.
If we have an employee retire and their spouse is still working and they can provide insurance on the company they work for, how are we going to know that if he's getting that kind of money from us, or she, or whoever it is getting that kind of money? You know, how are we going to know the difference if they are getting the insurance through their spouse at the company that they work for and what we send them on a monthly basis?
Sure.
How are we going to know the difference on it?
Yeah, the proof of the creditable coverage would be part of that. So we would see the premium request that would come in. So just like you receive a bill and you submit it, if you're working here and you get an expense report, you're getting reimbursed for those expenses. It would be the same thing with their premium. They would have to submit the premium request with the dollars that shows the health plan. They would need to confirm that it is creditable coverage, and so only then would they be reimbursed.
Okay, so they wouldn't get until they're able to show something being reimbursed for.
Correct. There would have to be a proof, obviously.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're already having to do that, correct, with any retiree benefits? We still have to vet that they're eligible for the benefits, and if they retire and get if they retire from us and go get another job and getting health care coverage from them, and then therefore don't qualify for our retirement, we're still going through that vetting process as is, correct?
We currently do not provide a retiree health care benefit. They currently pay the premium to us if they leave and retire from the city.
Okay. So would this stretch, or having to go through this vetting process, would that stretch our HR department and I guess y'all's abilities at this point? I mean, does that go through us, or do we have a consultant that vets all that for us and then just drafts a report on each employee?
Our goal would be to get council feedback tonight on what the palette is for the plan design, and then we would look into how we would actually operate and manage that program the most efficient and effective way possible. So I can't answer that question exactly right now, what it would do, but our goal would be to come up with a way to make it efficient and effective and make sure that we're providing the benefit, but also doing it in an effective manner on our end as well.
Would you predict that there's a significant difference in how staff implements Plan 1 as opposed to Plan 2?
I think the biggest difference in Plan 1 and Plan 2 is the difference in the time frame. The reason that staff is in support of Plan Design 2 is it truly represents a benefit to the employees who have served here the longest and probably are actually retiring at the age of 60.
When can we have like real numbers, like what option 1 versus option 2 is going to cost us based upon what the prediction of this year's rate's going to be for the entire insurance plan?
I would expect we would be able to possibly provide a Thursday packet with that information between now and a resolution to adopt a plan design. At this point, we don't have our current rates for the new plan year, but when we have those, it would be easier to make those budget estimates.
When will we have those? When will we have those?
We are currently reviewing final, we're under final review for our vendor. I would expect that healthcare for employees and those rates would come around in probably the end of June, I think is the time frame that we're looking at.
And is Kelsey the only bidder?
We had multiple vendors that had applied or had put in a bid. Kelsey is a service provider, not an insurance provider. So they were in a couple of Kelsey was in a couple of the different packages, but it's the insurance providers that bid, so it's Aetna or Cigna or United Healthcare that actually submits bids to us. And we did receive responses from about 22 different vendors on the different policies that we have. And we're under final review for those right now, and like I said, we expect to bring those back in June.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
just add to that, we shortlisted, correct me if I'm wrong, the firms based upon their pricing, and so the consultant's gone back to 2 firms on the healthcare side to get their last best offers, and we'll evaluate those. The 22 covers everything for dental, whatever else we provide. So, they were separated out like that.
Are you getting any guidance?
Well, I was going to ask, is the goal for this discussion to try and get us to eliminate one of the plans, or just give you guidance that what we want to see before we get to the point that we're able to make a decision?
I think my question tonight would be, is there a palette for some type of subsidy, whether it be the option 1 or option 2? And what council's direction is as it relates to that, and then we would bring back the actual budget and financial information based on that feedback.
I mean, if it's helpful, I think option 2 is really the only option that I would like to explore. I think is beneficial, but that's 1 of 7. If there's enough of us that will dwindle it down to just that option, then that reduces the amount of staff time to try and explore the impacts. But if we feel like we need to vet through both of them in more detail, as if it is not already confusing enough, and have staff go through both scenarios before we make a decision, I think we just got to give them that guidance. I'm personally in favor of just knocking off. If it were just me, I'd knock off Plan 1 and just have them explore Plan 2.
I would be interested in knowing what the cost is before I can really say I'm for 1 or I'm for 2. But option 2 looks like the better deal, but until we get some kind of numbers, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess my comment, it's the better deal off the back of what population? And what I would like to see is how does this, kind of like when we look at healthcare, Joe in Public Works is going to get this, you show us he's going to get a 2% raise, but healthcare is going up 5%, therefore he's getting a pay cut. I'd like to see something like that with a few examples so that we can see that, yeah, we're gonna double their premium from $582 to $1152, and what is that offset, and what do they end up looking like? Maybe some of the extremes. So somebody that comes here for 5 years, retires, from everything I'm hearing and seeing, those are the ones that will not get much benefit, but the ones that have been with the city for the longest time will get the most benefit. So maybe a few of those extremes, a couple in the middle. Until I see that, I don't know that I can rule out the point-based system. And correct me if I'm wrong, if we go with a point-based system, can't we adjust the points to different levels to design what we want?
Yes, you could adjust the points as well as the percentages of the subsidies. Those are points that can be moved.
Would that structure be easier to tweak over the long term? Meaning if we start with something on an annual basis, when it comes budget time and we look at healthcare costs, maybe we take it from 80 points to 82 points one year and then maybe 83. If we look to go one way or the other, would that not be easier to adjust than option 2?
And same with the percentage on those, it would be easier to adjust it on the points and service.
Certainly, we can look at alternative scenarios within each plan design. If you look at the slide that's on here, the total of OPEB liability, this is the present value of those cash flows for the current population. And so there is a material difference in the present value of those cash flows. So 5.5 million down to 3.8 million going to scenario 2, the service-based option, whereas the point is going to about 5 million, just under 5.5. So there's a reduction of about $250,000. So that gives you the magnitude of the decreases, even if it's not true cash flow dollars because it's a present value. It gives you the relative reduction, if you will, in the cash flows. And so looking at a change in the points, because we're opening it up to participants leaving as early as 50, that's why the benefit has to be so low. If we were to delay that to a similar situation under the scenario 2, where it's at least, or you have to be at least age 60 or 10 years of service, it would just be looking at age plus service as opposed to just service. So that's something, that's the reason for the difference in the liabilities.
And I'll be honest, my issue with one is the age 50, because then we're guaranteeing something, or we should be guaranteeing something to employees for 15 years. And that's, with healthcare where it is right now, that's a big gamble. So when you look at 60, you're guaranteeing 5 years. And to me, that's a whole lot easier for me to sit up here and say, I know I'm going to have money to pay for 5 years. Because the worst case scenario, in my opinion, is we promise something to a retiree and they get close to 65 and we say, we don't have the money. So I'm much more comfortable with that 60, and I'm under a retirement system with points, and it's confusing. I mean, it really is. So, and I'm looking to reward the employees that have been here. And that to me, that's what option 2 gives us, and that's why I support option 2 personally. But I am glad staff has found something where we can do something that, again, kind of like the bus service, I didn't think we'd be able to do, and I like the idea that we will be able to bridge this small gap for those looking to retire.
Yeah, I won't argue against other council members who think they need more information to make the decision. I don't think there's ever an argument against more information. I just feel like my personal feeling is option 2 benefits long-term employees. It limits our liability. It gives them a better benefit. And my concern with the idea of 1 and even the idea of opening it up to tweaking, we'll start having a lot of dials and levers over the time period. We can start, let's move this, let's try and do this, try and constantly make some sort of perfection out of an imperfect system, and it only gets more confusing for us, and it only gets more confusing for the employees. Maybe this is an argument of let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good. If we feel like the plan 2 is simple enough and gets us to where we need to go. I understand in actuarial terms, this all seems fairly simple for somebody who does it for a living, but present value, how those costs roll into each individual budget, it's confusing just to make the statement. When it comes to every budget year, it's going to get even more confusing, particularly for those who roll over on this council and weren't part of this discussion. I'm kind of more leaning towards let's just try and simplify it as best we can. Simplify our decision making and simplify what our employees need to understand in order to understand what benefits they get. I mean, if y'all need more information, I mean, again, I won't argue against it, but I feel comfortable that no matter what scenario we go down, we're going to end up on plan 2.
You know, go to the slide with the employee counts. Look at that slide from 50 to 64. There's about 200 people there. All of them won't be able to retire, but quite a few people in that group age there. But you know, I'm not too sure on this from the standpoint that if it does make a lot of difference for an employee, they may opt to leave. And so I don't think it's really something that looks as a retention aspect as much. Well, I know it does in some points on there, but still, if you're looking at going ahead and retiring, and and you say, okay, if this comes into effect, I might as well do that now. Because the next 5 years I'm taking care of or whatever, on that. So I know some of it be on retention, but some of the others that may want to jump out and go somewhere else, then this would be a good time to do it. And the other side of the coin is too, once you do it as a city, you're not going to take it away unless you're getting bad financial straits. So whatever decision you need to make, it needs to be made with the assumption of being, carried through with the process. You just don't take away given benefits and increasing benefits and then take them away. So whatever decision made, we need to make it and go through with it.
If I could, I agree and understand the last part of that. I mean, we need to go into this eyes wide open, and we've had the chance to digest and go through this. And that's why we set this up for discussion item, not pushing for decisions. I guess I got to go back. I'm trouble. I don't see where this could be any kind of incentive to leave before somebody had. I think it's actually the opposite. I just don't know how this could be run through and this would encourage anybody to leave earlier than they would otherwise.
Well, the only thing you look at, Clay, is in this period of time that we're in right now, there's a lot of construction, a lot of work and stuff like that going on in the private sector. And if you talk to some of the people, the companies in the private sector, they're having a hard time getting people that are qualified and good and experienced on it. So, I mean, if I were at the age of 60 and I could pick up this, well then, maybe as a consultant, I could do something on my own out there to pick up another 150, 200,000 a year working for a private company. So everybody's competing for employees right now, in the private sector. So,
and I agree, understand. I guess that to me, I hear what you're saying. That'd be a very, very narrow range. People that were 60 had some, wanted to keep working, had been with the city for a long time to earn the credits sufficient to make this worthwhile, and then decided to go off and do something. But if they took another job, then we're not going to pay them this benefit, right? So, well, I mean, not necessarily, but it'd be
A lot of companies don't want you at that age.
Well,
I work in the private sector. They don't want you at that age.
Well, you're in the wrong side then.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that for your company.
I'm a lot older than that. I've already had 5 calls, but that's the only thing I was looking at on it.
I mean, we're talking about, according to this chart, we're talking about potentially 5 employees. I mean, I don't think that's a huge issue. I do think that look, there's a lot of comparisons about private sector, but bear in mind that most good amount of jobs we have don't have private sector equivalents. We're going to be competing against other cities. That's what we need to move ahead of. To Keith's point, right now, at least with respect to Plan 1, right now what a lot of the other cities are dealing with is running a bankruptcy because they had these long-term healthcare benefits and retirement benefits that they couldn't afford. They took on what is essentially a debt. They can no longer pay it. I think that the benefit of, again, Plan 2 is that we're vastly limiting our exposure in both the amount of money and the time that we're paying that money, so that we don't end up having that problem. I mean, our retirement system generally doesn't allow itself to be allow the City of Pearland to be in the same conditions, say, City of Houston is. But I think with more and more of our employees retiring, getting to the point where we're controlling that cost a little better and giving them predictability so they know what they're up against, as opposed to get retired or get retirement and they get completely confused about what actual coverage they have, I think is the best option.
In both Plan 1 and 2, how did you come up with the percentages of people that would take the plan versus the subsidy?
The participation rates is what you're asking for. It was an educated guess.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
But because there is a benefit on both sides, if you lose on one, there's not a material difference on the other.
Is your educated guess based on data from other plans, other cities, or other?
Yes, it's historical data based on the percentage of cost and how participants elect those coverages. So there is basis for it. It's just not with the city, obviously.
Thank you.
Good.
pretty
That's
well
helpful.
here, but,
We'll
have you
follow
got-
up with some more information, and, we do need to, there are actual dollars in here based upon current, and, every year, the regular health care gets rolled up, and we'll update that as soon as we can, so.
Yeah, there seemed to be a leaning toward it, too, and, council, have any other comment or question at this point? Can you also, Michelle, you getting any guidance from your, do you feel like you're getting guidance or, no?
I have an idea of what to do next, yes.
Okay.
All right, that's good.
You think got enough information to
Yep,
press
yes,
on?
sir. Yep, we'll come back and bring you some more.
Okay, we'll visit this again. That in place, let's move to item number 4 on our agenda and have Councilmember Ordino present that for us.
Consideration and possible action, resolution number R 2018-84, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're in discussion. Staff report.
So we've been through contracts and contractors on our sidewalk replacement and continue to try to find a good system. But bottom line, we did go out for bids for street and sidewalk maintenance relative to concrete work, and recommend Greenscapes 6 for the amount that's suggested here. And this will cover 2 budget years. And looks like from the referrals and so forth that Greenscape is in a position to be able to deliver on the quantities. We've got a schedule for them and targeted amounts of work to be completed on a monthly basis, and we'll endeavor to stay on top of that so we can get into neighborhoods and get these sidewalks repaired as best possible.
Okay. Councilmember Owens, you got any problem with that?
Oh, Mayor, I don't have any problem with it.
Okay. Perez, you got any question on that?
No, Mayor.
Little? Ordino? Reed?
No comment, Mayor.
Moore? Carbone?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They may want to increase their bid having to sit through that last presentation.
Say the best for last.
Yeah. So it looks like we had 2 bidders, and one of them came in and scored a 80, the other one a 60. What was the big difference? Normally we see like a tabulation sheet. I didn't see it in there. What was the big difference between the 2 firms? Besides price?
Price plays a factor in the bid tabulation, but I think it's also performance too, is that we were having some struggles with our previous contractor to get through performing at the level we needed. And so we're excited to move forward and try some new blood and see them perform to the expectation we desire.
And I guess strange question. I mean, looking back at last time we bid this out, it all came in closer to, I guess, the higher bid this time. Is there any reason, or, I mean, the low bid's coming in 30% less in terms of the 4-foot width, linear foot pricing. That's great, but is there any concern of performance?
No, not with our reference checks that we've done with their other contracts that they've held with other agencies. They have been able to perform, and they've bid that price and must have a market niche right now.
All right. Thank you.
Any other question from council? We have a motion and second on the floor, Mr. Secretary.
Councilmember Ordino,
Aye.
Councilmember Little,
Aye.
Councilmember Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Owens,
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone,
Aye.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay, agenda said item 9 was council future agenda comments. There was no request. And at this item number 10, which will permit me to adjourn this great endeavor here today at 9:04. Thank all of you for being here. I think we made some good progress. Oops.